Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today here on our webinar with I-95 Dev. Just want to let everyone know that this is actually going to be a series of webinars, so we're going to have multiple partners join us throughout the weeks here. But today, I do have the pleasure of introducing Lauren and one of our very important partners at Bolt. I just want to let you guys know that we're going to do a little bit of introductions later on, but for now, do a short introduction on myself. My name is Hazel. I work here with I-95 Dev as their enterprise sales executive. I've been with I-95 Dev now for a little bit over 2 years, and have a pleasure of working with all kinds of customers and helping them in their e-commerce journey. The next person I'd love to introduce is Jeff Springer. Please, Jeff, go ahead.
Hi guys, this is Jeff Springer. I'm the Digital Accounts Director here at I-95. I've been an e-commerce professional for about 20 years, working with startups to Fortune 500 companies, really helping them in their digital transformation, digital strategies, technologies, understanding what they need to do to move their e-commerce platform forward.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jeff, for that short introduction there. I'd like to now introduce Bolt. Lauren from Bolt, please.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm Lauren from Bolt. I look after enterprise strategy for us. My background is 13 years in the payment space, so working with Braintree and WorldPay, really focusing on end-to-funnel conversion, payment optimization, risk, and those sorts of scenarios. I came to Bolt about 2 years ago, and so I'm excited to kind of tell you what we've been up to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren and Jeff, for those introductions. I think what we should do is let's just jump right into our discussion here. We're going to be talking about, of course, checkout and fraud, as that's where Bolt really specializes. But let's start off with a little bit of a background on how customers actually view checkout and fraud. Okay. Now, Jeff, I'd love for you to kick us off with this discussion. What are some bad experiences that you've seen? I mean, you've had years and years and years of experiences of working with merchants and customers. So I'd love to get your feedback on this particular topic. So what are some bad experiences that you've seen with some of your clients that you've worked with on bad checkout experiences? And maybe you can even give us some good experiences as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's the harder part is to actually give a good experience, but we all speak to bad. And, if we look at checkout as an entity in terms of how it was designed and how we were looking at it, is really even the terminology of how we use a cart to check out. It comes back to really back in the day of going to a grocery store, waiting in line, putting your items on the cart, out of the cart onto the conveyor belt, having your coupons ready, having your checkbook ready because you said write a check, having exact change, or if you're lucky, you were doing it with a credit card and they're doing the ditto credit card scan. So, checkout really has not evolved over the years. In around 2000, we start to see security being more of an issue, more of a request. Really, prior to that, people were actually faxing in credit card information to vendors after placing it online. So checkout has not evolved, and that's where we are today. We have seen new extensions, we have seen new designs, we've seen one-step checkout, we've seen 16-step checkout. Really, what it comes down to is the overall process of validating that person, making sure it's the right person, and shipping the right product to them for your safety and for theirs really hasn't evolved over the years.
Wow, thanks for that, Jeff. Lauren, how do you think Bolt can really kind of give us some benefits in regards to the checkout process?
Yeah, I can certainly speak to the benefits of Bolt. I think just to kind of set the stage a little bit, I mean, to Jeff's point, checkout hasn't changed since the advent of checkout online. People used to do cash on delivery for buying things online, and then PayPal kind of came around and built some trust into offering a credit card up online. But even since then, it's always been the same thing. Enter your shipping address, select your shipping option, enter your billing address, enter your payments, lots of clicks, lots of redirects, lots of fields to enter if you're paying with a credit card. And still 70% on average of consumers are paying with a credit card when they buy something online. And so it's still very, very painful for them. So to Jeff's point, what are some good checkout experiences online? I always actually like to point people to a couple examples. I think Nike has a great checkout I think Apple.com has a great checkout. So these are good examples where you can kind of go and look and see what they're doing and try to maybe emulate some of those best practices. But for the purposes of what we're doing at Bolt, we want to revolutionize the checkout experience. We really fundamentally believe that checking out online should be as easy as ordering an Uber, that you should be able to make purchases online in a similar way that you can make purchases on Amazon, but across every site on the internet. The important thing to note there is that when customers are shopping online, their experiences are shaped by some of the best experiences and the experiences they have most often. One of those experiences is that of Amazon with a single-click buying experience. And so they're shaping that expectation, and now retailers need to live up to that expectation of a single-click buying experience, and that's exactly what we're developing towards and building at Bolt.
Wow, that's amazing that you actually mentioned Uber and Amazon. I mean, they're definitely one of my two favorite apps that I use on a regular basis. So thank you so much for highlighting that in regards to the good experiences. Now, I'd like to bring it right back to Jeff here. Jeff, if you could just, before we kind of dive a little bit more in depth on the checkout and the fraud experiences, could you just kind of highlight a little bit for us, Jeff, on what really is the difference between checkout and fraud?
Well, yeah, it's kind of, they're intertwined. They're one and the same. Checkout is the process of, confirming who you are and moving on to the thank you page, and hopefully your products make it there. Fraud, the idea that somebody, how do you validate that that it's not your person, that I actually made the purchase, or that as a merchant that I'm concerned that am I, sending product to somebody else that's not proper. There's a lot of complexity in checkout. We're doing a lot of lookups for address validation, and adding promo codes into the system. Fraud really is another layer historically added on top of your checkout process to protect yourself, and to protect your customers and protect you as a merchant to be reputable within the credit card processing companies.
Perfect. That's definitely a wonderful explanation there. Lauren, I guess let's just focus a little bit more on the fraud aspect. How does Bolt kind of help with the fraud aspect?
Yeah, so this is actually pretty unique to us. So we think of checkout and fraud as really one and the same, as Jeff mentioned. And the reason we think about that is it's everything that's happening at the end of the funnel. From the moment someone clicks on a checkout button, the retailer is trying to instill trust in that experience to show them this is a trustworthy site that you can purchase from, you're going to get your products, and your information is safe with us. And on the flip side, the retailer is measuring that transactional risk, right, and seeing if this is going to be a chargeback. And in order for a retailer to do that, they have to collect certain data at chargeback or at checkout to make sure that that's not going to come back as a chargeback. And so part of the friction in a buying experience online is collecting information to try to validate that transaction. So I think everyone's familiar with entering their billing address, entering their billing zip code, entering a CVV code. All of this is there to protect the retailer against chargebacks and fraud. And so part of that user experience is actually complicated by the need to make sure that doesn't come back as a chargeback. So we fold in our user experience with fraud to remove some of that friction and still secure the transaction against risk. So if you look at a Bolt checkout, you're going to notice that there is no billing address, there is no billing zip code. And we actually even go as far as measuring some of the risk signals that happen throughout that checkout experience to dynamically optimize that checkout experience for the risk level of that transaction. And what I mean by that is maybe we need to give them a billing zip code and say, hey, one extra step, put that billing zip code in. Maybe we can get rid of the CVV altogether if we deem that this is a very low-risk transaction. So it's really being smart about the user experience, having fraud tools that complement the checkout experience rather than complicate it. And so for retailers, what we want to do is remove the risk entirely, remove all the liability in terms of accepting credit card transactions, but more importantly, we want to approve more orders when those orders go through. So it's all about increasing order approval rates. I think when we talk about bad checkout experiences, one of the worst checkout experiences online is having your credit card decline due to fraud when you're on the up and up.
You're exactly right with that, Lauren. And one of the biggest main points of what merchants are trying to do is basically have retention, right? With all of their clients, they're trying to retain their clients, and they're always trying to get those same customers as repeat customers. And as you mentioned, if I ever get a decline from any one of the on my page, especially if I know that there's money in there, I'm definitely not going back to that particular merchant, right? So it's not a great experience to as a consumer to go through. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because retention and repeat customers, it sounds like Bolt really has that on, I guess you can say, lockdown, and specializes on that. So what I'd really like to also kind of get your point of view on, Lauren, is a little bit on why is it so challenging to really create this checkout, this amazing checkout experiences. Why is it as challenging as, I mean, for me, I'm not familiar with, development. So I'd love to hear your background on why it's so challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, checkout is tricky because checkout is plugged into so many downstream integrations and software. So when you think about a checkout experience and completely redesigning a checkout experience, you're going to have to plug into your ERP system, to your payment processor, to your tax tools, to your loyalty tools and discount codes, to the shipping aggregators. This actually creates a lot of complexity behind the scenes, and ultimately what you want to do is A/B test that checkout experience. So you're going to be constantly kind of reorganizing these elements and putting out new tests. And to do that, there's a lot of risk. If something breaks, then obviously you're going to have a decrease in your order acceptance, and it's very resource intensive, right? You're going to have your IT teams dedicated to this for an extended period of time, and a lot of IT resources are going to be expended in doing that. Kind of back to your point around retention, I think that's a really nice thing to flag, because not only are you not going to be able to retain customers if you're declining them due to false positives, but this is one of the things that, at the top of the call, we started talking about single-click checkout and an Amazon-like experience. What's really unique about what Bolt has started doing is that when someone checks out on the Bolt network, any retailer that's using Bolt, we store that information. We then make it portable across our entire network. So you make a purchase from merchant A, and you come back to that same merchant, you're able to buy with a single click, without a username, without a login. We recognize you, and we're able to process that transaction in a single click. And we do this across the entire network. So now you want to go to merchant B, and even though you've maybe never been there before, you can make that purchase with a single click. And this is all about customer lifetime value. It's all about driving up those single click transactions and completely removing the friction that happens when a person is inspired to buy something.
Wow, that's definitely amazing information, great information to know. Thanks so much for adding that last piece there, Lauren. I just want to take another little step back here. We do know that Magento also has a checkout process. So, and I'd love to bring in the point of view of Jeff a little bit here. Jeff, please talk to us a little bit about what's the difference between, obviously you've heard Bolt, and we're partners with Bolt, and we know their product, but just for the listener now that's looking into Magento, what's the biggest difference between the two checkouts from Bolt as well as Magento?
Sure. Yeah, Magento has a fine checkout. Magento, just like any tool, it's designed to be open source and to be able to be modified. Now, out of the box, Magento gives you a really basic checkout. It validates your credit, we ties into your credit card processing, ties into your tax validations. It validates with your promo codes. You create customer information. The biggest challenge that you run into with a system like Magento is that it's not one size fits all for all customers. And you partner with somebody, or you take on that project to do it yourself. And the fact of the matter is, the heart of any e-commerce platform is their checkout process, is the order flow of creating a customer. With doing any type of a modification, a lot of this starts with UI, UX. I really just want it to look like on one page checkout. I like the way it looks on Amazon. You can hear these mark directors across everyone. It's way more complex than that. The idea of tying into a network and having tokenization to allow for multiple, validations and understanding what risk level I am as a customer for you as a merchant, making a purchase on both sides allows us to really have some really powerful tools with Bolt, opposed to going through Magento standard checkout.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I like to think about Bolt is, as you mentioned, is a powerful tool and a wonderful complement to Magento. So absolutely, and you just highlighted every point that I was thinking of as well, Jeff. So thank you so much for that. Um, with that being said, guys, I want to go ahead and just kind of wrap this up. As I mentioned, we're going to have a series of webinars, going forward. So we don't want it we could talk for hours in regards to checkout and fraud and, our dream portal here. But, let's just wrap it up and start off with some closing thoughts. I'll pass it over to Lauren first. Lauren, please, what are some of the closing thoughts that you kind of want our listeners to walk away with today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, guys. This is great, and I hope we get a chance to do more of these. Just in terms of closing thoughts, I think one of the things we want to do at Bolt is obviously we love retailers to use Bolt, but we also like to learn from retailers and talk to people who are actually kind of in the trenches doing these sorts of things. So we'd love to talk to any of the listeners that are viewing this now. We do offer a scorecard, so we actually go through whether you guys use Bolt or not. We go through your checkout and say, hey, here's some things you might want to tweak that I think could really be impactful to your conversion. And I think when you talk to retailers about some of the biggest changes they've made that have made the biggest impacts, checkout is definitely one of them. And so while retailers are thinking about how they can deliver a better customer experience, we certainly would love them to use Bolt, but we'd also like to help them do that just through knowledge sharing and thought leadership. So I hope the listeners will take some time and definitely get in touch.
Thanks, Lauren, for that. And again, thank you for joining us today. Jeff, please.
Yeah, so the hope of checkout and the hope of e-commerce is the evolution of the product, is evolution of the human user experience, whether it's entering in data. As we mentioned, we're going to a spot where we're hoping for one click. We're going to a future where we're hoping there is no click. It's basically I just want it and it shows up. Or I walk into a store and I pick up an apple and I walk out and I'm charged for it. These are type of things that are happening around us daily. It's important for do your research on checkout. Realize there's pros and cons of familiarity of checkout. A lot of the reasons why we're doing things the same way is it worked. Well, it worked doesn't mean you evolve from it. It doesn't mean you get better. So I would recommend, definitely taking out a demo of Bolt and partnering with partnering with I-95 to implement your systems.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for that. With that being said, guys, I absolutely 110% encourage every single one of you to please reach out to us. You can go to our website. You can also go to Bolt's website. I encourage you to look at their sample of their product positioning, their demo, because if you see the sample, you'll absolutely see the value behind it. So I absolutely invite everyone to take a look at it and reach out to us if you have any questions or you'd like to see that sample. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today, and we hope to see you guys again soon. Thank you again. Bye-bye.